is Christopher Saunders, and this is the Connecticut Sports Talent Show, where we talk all things talents in Connecticut. And I hope everybody survived. It was a very hectic storm. I know it was softer in some places. The wind wasn't as bad. Others, there was a lot more damage. I hope everybody is safe, their families are safe, and that the power is back on. On today's show, I have the defensive coordinator for three full seasons for Foran, John Reinecke. John, it's great to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You know, I love having defensive guys on, either players or coaches. You're the second defensive coordinator that I've had on. I've had some defensive-minded head coaches, but you're only the second defensive coordinator I've had. I had the Glastonbury defensive coordinator on about a month and a half ago. And I just feel like having you guys on kind of bring a different perspective, because offensively, we know everything's the spread and everybody loves scoring. But to me, I always felt like it was much more rewarding being able to stop teams from scoring 30, 40, 50 points a game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's being able to watch film and be able to see what an offense is doing and then trying to come up with a scheme to try to stop it is so much fun, you know, and I love being able to, like, offense is going to do whatever. What can I do to change their philosophy, you know, and take away what they want to do? And if you come up with the right game plan and it works, I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than that.
And we will be talking about as far as defense, and we'll break down a couple things later on in the show. But first, I want to talk about yourself. Kind of just give me your path, your journey, as far as what led you to Foran.
So I started out in Guilford. I started out in Guilford under Coach Tom Unger. So there I had a varsity position group to coach, but I also helped out with the freshmen and the sophomore games. And I just got a lot of good learning experience there, being able to call an offense, being able to call a defense, and then learning from some of the coaches that were on staff. Tom Unger, he was just a relentless worker. He'd always drive by the high school and his car would always be there. So I got to learn about work ethic there. And then Scott Benoit was on staff as well. And just watching him be able to come up with defensive schemes, there's no one better to learn from. So that was a great learning experience there. That was probably like 6 years with Guilford and that staff. And then that staff left and Mike Eagle came in, and he was gracious enough to keep me on staff and still work at Guilford with him. And he really gave me the confidence to become the defensive coordinator there. I'd taken over running the defense a little bit with a couple other guys for the first year that he was there. And then the second year, he's like, just take the reins and go with it. You're ready for it. I don't know if you're ever ready for it. Like, talking to Coach Drew, he's like, I don't know if I was ready to be a head coach, but I went with it, and you learn as you go. And that was just the best experience. He let me just take the reins and go with it. And it was just phenomenal. And then I got hooked on it, you know, and I just love defense. So then that staff left at Guilford, and I followed Coach Drew to Jonathan Law, and they didn't have a spot for me on staff, but I worked behind the scenes. Coach Drew, it's his first defensive coordinator role, and he was a little nervous, so I got to work with him directly and really teach him more about coverages. He was great with the box and everything, but I got to teach him about the coverages, and I got to be up on the booth during game nights and do that. And it was a great run we had there. We were able to make the playoffs. And then next was Coach Drew went to Foran, and I just followed him there. And that's where I am now.
Now, you mentioned about how you kind of were thrusted into, you know, certain situations. And I've kind of always believed that if you say no to something, you're kind of closing the door on it before you even really know what it is. But for you, it seems like you kind of took a different path, which was, I'm going to see what this is, at least attempt and try it. And it seems like you really have run with it since then.
Yeah, like I said, it was so, I just had so much fun doing it. And it was so rewarding being able to work with the other guys on staff, teach them what I know, learn from them. And it's just, I can't get enough. And it's just been such a great experience, and I can't wait to keep doing it.
And you also mentioned as well that Benoit helped you with defensive schemes. What exactly did Benoit help you with? Was it the the coverages? I mean, was it different defensive schemes? What was it exactly?
It's funny. We played them week 1 last year, and they're the triple option team, and we ran triple option at Guilford, and we had to stop it a couple times. So he had this way to stop just a little mix up for option where he'd bring a corner off the edge, and I was watching their film and I'm like, I think this is a good scheme for against East Haven in certain formations. So I did it, and we were talking after the game. I'm like, I was taking notes when you were there at Guilford, like just to be able to stop option. Here's a little thing that I stole from you. And he's like, it's great. I love that you were paying attention and everything. And also, I remember when I think it was Jake White was at Foran, and he was having a phenomenal year. And Coach Benoit was like, we got to mix up coverage and do something different than what we've been doing. And Guilford shocked Foran. I think that he threw for like 3 interceptions or something like that. I think it was Jake White, but I'm not positive. But just being able to take coverages and schemes, it was such a great learning experience from him.
That's something where I think you look at defensively, and we know that there's a lot of high power offenses in Connecticut, but being able to have a potent defense and being able to make plays. I mean, you think about Newtown, their defense was very, very strong last year.
Yeah.
Hand's defense was good as well. I mean, you could throw out a lot of teams, even some of the teams that weren't well recognized, even with their record. It wasn't because of the offense or because of the defense. It was because the offense was young, inexperienced, and so on and so forth. So I think when you look at it, being able to kind of take different pieces from the coaches that you've been with and kind of learn on the fly, that's how you grow as a defensive coordinator or even as a defensive guy in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're not looking at other people's film and stealing stuff, I mean, you're not trying hard enough. It's you got to be able to look at what people are doing and be like, hey, I think we can do this. Does it fit our scheme? And like you talk about Newtown, you talk about Hand, they're always known for they're a defensive powerhouse, and that's what we're trying to do at Foran is just kind of change the culture a little bit. I always thought of Foran as a high-powered, scoring 40, 50 points a game, and it would be kind of a shootout. Now, like we're just trying to really establish, hey, let's be a defensive mindset team and really get after it.
What's the saying? If you steal it from one person, or if you take something from one person, it's stealing. If you take it from one person, or if one person or 10 people take it from one person, it's research.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't think it's that big of a deal, but some people think it is. Whatever. Point is, I love hearing about what you've done in the past, Coach, and kind of going through that journey with you. A question I had for you, just looking at before we talk about the program, I have a question about defense, or a few questions about defense, because I think the way the game is changing, not just at the college level, the pro level, and even to a certain degree, the high school level, it seems like there's more focus on offense. And the way that practices are too, it's harder to really be able to kind of get the schemes down if you're trying to get your point across. And sometimes it takes a full season just because of the lack of time. So have you kind of figured out ways to be able to get through those problems?
Yeah, like we and Coach Drew really loves to steal offensive time and really have offensive practices, but what's great about our defense compared to our offense is that what we run in offense is what we see a lot every single week, so we are able to get reps almost every single day, and with our roster being so large, we have a lot of kids that go both ways. We get those second string kids allowed to work during the offensive days. So we're defensive days, we're getting the number ones and number twos work. And then offensive days, we're getting the 2s and 3s work. And it's really, the kids are really starting to learn the scheme. Before I got there, they were an odd front, and I brought in an even front. So it took some getting used to, but they're really buying into it and they're really learning the scheme, and you can see with some of the scores that we've had that it is paying off, all the work that we've been doing on the defensive days.
And looking at both the front side and the back side, I'm talking about the defensive line, the linebackers and such, and then I'll get to the corners and the safeties in a second. How are you teaching as far as technique and, the mindset for linebackers, for the defensive tackles and such?
So we're a gap integrity team. We're always going to have our gaps filled. So depending on what an offensive lineman is going to do, if he's going to block down, that defensive tackle is going to go down with him, and that's going to change the gap responsibility for the linebackers. But we want the linebackers working downhill. We had a linebacker my first year at Foran, Justin DL, and he had 130 tackles, I think, was for the first year that he had it. Yeah, and he was with the odd front. It's tough to keep those inside linebackers free. But we're trying to get big one techniques to just demand double teams to leave the inside linebackers free and have them work downhill and just meet them at the line of scrimmage.
It almost sounds like you're trying to beat them with numbers, where if you can kind of force the team as far as the guards to be able to push up, and even if, to a certain degree, if the tackles have to help out and they have to help out on one player in particular, I mean, you do the math. If you bring 6 and they can only bring 5, and then 2 are guarding one, 2's guarding another, I'm pretty sure the center's not going to be able to take the rest. So you have an opportunity to really kind of bring the house.
Well, yeah, and it's all a numbers game, like you said. Those offensive coordinators are counting the box, and if there's 6 in the box, they're going to try to throw it depending on what formation they're in. So with how we're aligning and what we're doing as a defensive line and as a box in general, we're trying to dictate on what they're going to do and understand what they're doing ahead of time.
Now, are you dropping the linebackers? Because again, I keep referring to offense, but there's a reason why. Because defense, even now, from what I've heard from, college analysts, college broadcasters, even some of the pro guys, they talk about how because the offense is changing, because the tight end can catch, and there's more athletic tight ends, teams are looking for linebackers who can go sideline to sideline, who can vertically and horizontally go all around the field. Kind of like Jalen Smith, because I'm a Cowboys fan. He's all over the field. So are you having? I'm not trying to say that you guys have Jalen Smith, because that's high praise and that's a lot of pressure. But do you kind of have your linebackers move around and try to be those cover guys?
Our Mike linebacker, we try to have to be the more physical run stopper type guy, and our weak side linebacker is going to be our more speed coverage guy. If a team has a tight end that they really want to get involved, I'm more of changing the defensive front, maybe putting a defensive end on him, jamming him at the line of scrimmage just to take off that timing, or bringing an outside overhang backer down, jamming him, just shifting the front a little bit as opposed to having our linebackers, just because we want the linebackers to be more run fillers, and then we're luckily we have 5 in the shell where we can cover. Our numbers are still good where we can cover most routes and concept.
I would really love to see your defense against now your former friend, or probably current friend, Mike Eagle, who is at Coggins, because I mean he's got so many toys. He's got the wide receivers. The tight end that he has is like 6'4", 230. I mean, I feel like that would be, you probably would not be sleeping leading up to that week.
He is a nightmare to stop. He's an absolute, because then if you're bringing pressure, he's just going to have an arc, like a slant going over the top now. And then if you're trying to cover man coverage or do whatever, he's going to have, if he sees your free safety starting to fill in the run game a little bit, he's going to have a third level read and throw it over the top. He's just got an answer for everything. He is just an absolute nightmare to stop. And we scrimmaged them last year, a try scrimmage with Brantford, and he just has an answer for everything that you do. It's just the amount of game planning and film that you have to watch to stop him is just, it's unreal. He's just got such a great offensive mind.
Even in a short season too, I could only, and people were kind of sleeping, I felt like, on Coggins because they're in Class M. Everybody kept saying, oh, it's going to be it's going to be St. Joe's and, Killingly, and no disrespect to them. I'm not saying that they're not going to make it to the championship, or however it may be, depending on the championships, whatever. But I've always kind of felt like people were always sleeping on Coggins, maybe because they're in the Pequot, maybe because they think that, when teams go, from the Pequot go to the playoffs, they get spanked. But not every team is the same. And I kind of feel like Rockville last year, Coggins potentially this year could really kind of break out and would surprise a lot of people.
Coggins been our game scrimmage the last 2 years. Coach Drew and Coach Becker know each other very well. They're good friends. So they've always set up that game scrimmage so right before our regular season. And playing them last year, they got a quarterback that can sling it. Yep. They got huge receivers. I mean, just it seemed like all of them were like 6'3", and like just caught everything. And they competed with us really well. And I can't remember the score, but it was a tight game. I mean, I think it was horrible weather, which didn't suit them very well. But I think it was tight. But with those kids that they have and Coach Eagle's scheme, they're going to be a dangerous team, like you said. They need to be, eyes need to be on them.
Yeah, more at the wide receiver position. And then you got the twins. One's a quarterback, one's a wide receiver. So they already have that relationship. The tight end, Garrettson, who is still very, very young. I feel like Mike Eagle was probably sitting back like, I have all these toys and I can do whatever I want.
Oh, he's biting at the chops right now. He's ready to go. He can't wait to get with those kids and work with them.
He's like, give me 6 seasons and let me just do what I got to do.
It's a shame that he can't get a full year in with them.
I know.
The stuff that they could do would be unreal.
But you know what? Let's get back on track. It's my apologies. I talked about Mike Eagle enough. I'm sure he's like, don't talk about me. Talk about Reinecke. He deserves this. So the secondary, the safeties, the corners, those are more like my positions. I kind of love that side of the football, on the defensive side, because I kind of felt like between the linebackers and the secondary guys, they see the field a little bit more than you would on the front side. So what are you teaching them technique? Are you kind of bringing them farther back? Are you bringing them more forward? And are you having them more physical? Because especially now with the rules changes, you can't touch wide receivers past 2 feet.
Yeah, it makes it difficult. Our free safeties are coach on the field. He calls everything for us. So we've had a free safety for the last 2 years that did a great job of calling coverages, getting guys lined up. So this main focus when we were able to have off-season training was being able to teach why we call certain coverages to certain formations, being able to cover all verticals or whatever concepts they're running. So that was a big teaching point when we were able to have Zoom meetings with our kids. So Joe Capella, he's probably going to be our free safety. He's a captain for us. He's just a ball hawk, and he's learning, excuse me, why we do call those certain coverages. Our weak side safety, we want him to be more of a physical type kid. He's he's our hybrid safety linebacker. If we have to come down and bring him as an overhang, he can be physical, taking on guards, but he can also be able to cover the deep half of the field, So he's a really tough kid to find. Our captain last year, Will Fallon, he was a great body to have. I mean, he was 6'3", about 195, 200, could run. So he was a great kid to have. Our corners, they're not super physical. We'd love to get them in the run game, but their job is to keep everything inside. They're going to take on corners and make sure everything bounces back inside. We call it, they're the secondary box players. We don't want anything getting outside of them because we have our free safety and we have our weak side safety coming in and filling the alleys and just everything working together with our pursuit angles. That's everything stays inside there.
Are you focusing more on the secondary guys having to go for interceptions, or are you more so trying to tell them to keep the ball, like you said, inside, just go for the tackles? Because sometimes if you have teams or if you have players try to go for the interception, then you could give up a big play more often than not. Like, yeah, you'll get the pick, but then you'll also give up 4 or 5 big-time plays.
If you watched us against East Haven last year, that was a difference of the game. We were great coverage, and it was a 7-7 game, I believe, and our corner tried to undercut a route, and the quarterback put it on a perfect spot. Kid made a one-handed catch, and he was up the sideline for a touchdown, and we lose 14-7. So there are times that we want kids to go for the interception, but what we've been preaching is that we don't want to give up the big play. We don't want the ball over our head. We want to keep everything in front of us, and offenses are going to get first downs. Offenses are going to make big plays, but we want to minimize the amount of big plays. and that's been the big focus. I mean, we faced last year Shakespeare Rodriguez, and he was an unbelievable wide receiver for Lyman Hall. And our preaching all week is don't let him have the big play. And unfortunately, first play of the game, he made a big play. But, you know, like that kid was a great receiver. And the kids still are trying to buy into that philosophy of live to see another play. You know, you don't have to make the superstar play. Just don't give up the big plays that may cost us the game.
I always say during the broadcast, or I have said many times in the broadcast, as far as trying to keep the ball in front or trying to watch the ball and not have it go over your head, because if your eyes, you can see straight, but when you go up, your vision kind of lacks a little bit, and that's when things start to get a little bit distorted. So as far as, you know, when I've said, hey, if the defense can look straight, they're at their strength. But when you start turning and moving, because of when you're moving your head, your eyes are going everywhere, and then that's when things, especially in bad weather, things are starting to already lack as is. So I think, like you said, being able to preach, just look at the field fully, because as soon as you turn, that's when the vision starts to lack.
Yeah, and then your balance is off, and you might not be able to make a play on the ball like you normally would if it was in front of you.
That's great, Coach. I mean, I could talk defense all day. I mean, it's something that I love. I mean, I'm a triple option guy, so I think it's kind of weird how I love defense, and then I love one of the hardest things to stop in football, which is the triple option.
Oh, my gosh, it's such a bear to stop. We had Barlow on our schedule this year, but I don't know if it's going to happen with everything that's going on. But I've been having nightmares already trying to think about how we're going to stop them. We faced them in a practice last year, and they just run it so well. It's such a tough concept to stop.
Well, let's not forget, though, too, you also have Coach Shortell with Granby. He runs the triple option extremely well. And now the new head coach at Ledyard, Coach Sorecchio, who's coming from Springfield, he runs the triple option. So, and he seems like, and he comes from the triple option, too. So he, you know, it's nice to see that the triple option is coming back in Connecticut. I feel bad.
Everything doesn't have to be spread or RPOs or anything, you know?
I mean, hey, I like to be able to change it up. Even if it wasn't the triple option, it could be under center. I'm 100% okay with that. I've seen the spread now for, 3 years, going on 4 years, depending on what happens this year. And it's like after a while, because I've seen, and this is, I know we're getting off topic, but now since we're talking about it, I see a lot of teams do spread that, no offense, should not be doing spread. They don't have and it's the same thing with the triple option, or if you're running the wing T, because the wing T is a big thing in the NVL. And there's, if you don't have the ingredients, you shouldn't make the food. Just the same thing where if you don't have the players, don't run the offense, because you're making the kids feel like crap, first off, because they can't run it. Work to their strengths, not to what makes you feel good. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you got to cater everything to your players. It's just you might know a scheme, but you got to be able to adjust. And that's like us. We're not a man coverage team. We don't have the skill to run man coverage all the time. So we got to be great at knowing our zone drops and knowing our reads when we're looking at receivers and everything. So you got to cater to what your players are good at.
You have to. I mean, at the end of the day, like, the coach is not playing. It's the players. They're on the field trying to win. They're trying their best to be able to make the coach happy. So you would think, okay, well, maybe the coach will be less mad if he runs something that we can do rather than not,
Yeah, exactly.
But, Coach, I got a couple more minutes left with you. I really appreciate you coming on. It's great to be able to have a defensive coordinator on the show. Now, you talked about two things in particular. We'll talk about first the amount of kids in the program. You about average 56 to 60 per year during your time with Foran. That's really impressive, especially now with what we're dealing with, even prior to COVID, just because of, there's been talk from parents, football is not good, concussions, everything. It's not safe. But you guys are still able to get the numbers and have a full roster. That's huge for the program.
Oh, it's huge. The Class M team to have 55, 60 kids on a roster is just unreal. And it has to do a lot with Coach Drew. He just preaches family, and cohesiveness, and he makes practices fun. It's not, we're not running sprints to condition. We're making practice conditioning, so the kids are having fun while they're doing it. They're getting their friends to come out now. They're saying, oh my God, this coaching staff is doing a great job. You should come out. And word of mouth is just a great way to get a lot of kids out in the program. And for it to happen for 3 years in a row, it's saying a lot about what Coach Drew is doing and what he's preaching every single day.
It helps with the amount of seniors that you've had the last couple of years. And you mentioned prior to the interview starting last year's senior class, 18 of them, they established the culture. And the reason why I bring up that word culture is because I've mentioned it to a lot of coaches. And I don't know if you know this, but I guess according to the coaching world, and again, I did not know this, I learned this, that culture has a different meaning to each and every coach. Like I talked to Coach Mulrooney down at Anna Maria, and he said that he had, in his eyes, culture was language. And then I've talked to another coach who said culture was, work ethic. So for you in particular, how do you view culture?
I'd say work ethic. I'd have to go with that. Those seniors last year worked their tails off every single day, and they never took a practice off, whether they were starting on offense and it would say a defensive day, they were getting reps. If they weren't getting reps on offense, they'd be on the defensive side of the ball trying to get those backups better, and that's what we want, just leading by example. And just the way they communicated with one another, the way they leaded with one another was just something that I think is going to continually build upon with these seniors that are coming up and the younger kids in the program.
And a lot of credit, and people kind of lose sight of where when they see the champion, if they see a team succeed, they just think that, and I'm not poo-pooing all the hard work that the class did or the group of kids did that year to be able to get that success. But I think people need to remember that it's the past classes. Let's say it's the 2019 class of last year. Well, the 2018 class and the 2017 class kind of did their work to kind of get to that point. And I bring that up because I don't know if you're familiar with the Waterbury area, but Waterbury Career Academy last year had their best season in program history. I think they were going into year 4. They were 7-3. The past 3 years, they were at 500 or below 500. But Pete Flamia kind of has built a strong culture there, which is hard in Waterbury because there's so many schools and you're having to pick. And the reason why I bring that up is because the senior class before that year they went 7-3, they were not as, I would say, talented as the class that went 7-3, but they worked their tails off. They tested those young men and they prepared them for what was a successful season. And I can kind of compare that, even though this is a short year, Coach, this kind of sounds like a potential Waterbury Career Academy situation where that, you mentioned the senior class. And I'm not poo-pooing the fact that they weren't talented. I'm sure they were. But they probably prepared this class for a very successful season. And people can't lose sight of that senior class from last year.
Yeah, it's, you can't put a price tag on that, just what they can learn from their peers. Excuse me. We can preach, but until somebody buys in, nothing's really going to change. And those seniors bought in, and now that this senior class is going to buy in based on what those kids, because they look up to them. The juniors are going to look up to that senior class, and they went from a 1-9 team 2 years ago to a 5-5 team, and they're seeing, oh, what we're doing is working, and we're going to continue to buy into what's being preached, and the kids are just taking it and going with it.
Coach, I love what's going on at Foran. I really do. Coach Drew is a fantastic guy. You're a great guy yourself. We've just about run out of time, and I could talk to you forever, but thank you so much for being able to come on the show, and you're welcome to come back on anytime. Hopefully, when the season, and I think it will finish, and Foran has a successful season because I picked them as one of the teams to pop. Hopefully you'll come back on and talk about how successful the season was for Foran football.
I'd love to. I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. Anytime. I'll wrap things up here in the Connecticut Sports Talent Show. So until next time, stay safe. Remember, CT stands for Connecticut Talent, and I'm on a journey to find them all. Have a good one, everybody.